Hi guys, on this episode, we will be turning these floral pants into a two-piece 60s inspired bandeau and shorts outfit. I'm in love with this overwhelming spring-like print and always wanted to transform this item into something fun and sexy. I started off with the pants and placed 2 pins on each side of the waistband with the center front centered. Then on each side, continue to pull the excess fabric by the side seam and pin off the excess, keeping in mind to leave some ease. When pinning the sides, there's a gradual increase of ease from 1 inch to approximately 1.25 inches. Once both sides are pinned to your actual size, make sure to measure both sides to see if the garment is pinned symmetrically. Once approved, mark 1/2 inch of excess fabric as your seam allowance. As well as do the same thing for the crotch area. When making the shape of the shorts, I've decided to go with the Marilyn Monroe French cut short, where the front is a very steep arch and the back very low in order to cover more skin. With the pants on, I then cut the excess fabric off by the 1/2 inch line. As well as cut off the shape of the shorts of both front and back. After cutting the shape of the shorts, the crotch needed to go in with another 3/4 of an inch, totaling to a 1.25 inches. So then I cut off one side of the crotch at its 1/2 inch seam allowance point. Now that one side of the shorts is defined, I emulated one side to the other by firstly eyeballing the length of the shorts and then cutting across. Make sure to zip the pants closed during this process. Then cut along the unaltered side seams and crotch to separate the front from the back. Starting off with the front, I flipped the altered side onto the unaltered side, making sure that it is laid precisely in respect of the crotch seam, allowing the shorts to be symmetrical. I then used pins to keep the altered side in its place, then cut off the excess fabric using the altered side as my pattern. After cutting off the excess of the side seam, the pocket opening became smaller, only allowing for 2 fingers in, which is non-functional. So I used a seam ripper to unravel the waistband from the front and back pocket opening. By unraveling 2 inches from the side seams, you would have the waistband, top pocket, and bottom pocket separated. I then decided to make an opening of 5 inches and marked the point using a pin. I then cut from the point to the top of the pocket approximately 3/8 of an inch, allowing my hand to fit. I did the same with the back shorts and transferred the altered side onto the unaltered side. And cut off the excess fabric in respect of the crotch seam. Now for the top, I took the legs of the pants and marked 1/2 of my measurement of the bust using pins and cut 1/2 inch away from the pins for seam allowance. I squared the trousers to make a rectangular shape for the bodice by folding the one squared half onto the other and cutting straight across. I took one of the rectangles and folded it twice and cut through by the fold. I then measured half from the edge for seam allowance, then 3.5 to 4 inches from the seam allowance point for the apex, also known as the nipple point. I then cut 1/2 inch from the seam allowance and zeroed it until the apex point. I then placed the pieces on top of each other to make sure all is even. I then cut off the hem of the pants using the other, then cut the seam allowances of the pants, creating 2 pieces. I then folded the one piece in half, then used one of the front bust pieces to establish the width of the tie. I then created another tie by placing the first piece onto the other to replicate. So for the bodice, you would have the back bodice, 2 front cups, and front 2 ties. For stability, I decided to use the extra pieces for sleeves or strips, but I haven't decided yet, but I will at the end. So in total, you will have the extra sleeve strap pieces, the front bust cups, the 2 front ties, and the 1 back bodice. And for the shorts, you'll have the front and back pieces. When sewing these pant pieces together, we will firstly start with the pockets. We will close off the bottom of the pocket using the French seam technique, which is to sew first right side out, then sew again right side in. We then need to close off the seam that meets the pocket and pants inside out. Leaving the pocket neatly finished. We then combine the front and back just by folding the seam allowance in and sew, excluding the waistband. This technique isn't the neatest, but then I thought I'm the only one wearing it, so it's whatever. When combining the waistband together, each side seam needs to meet unfolded. Just to create a neater finish. Once both sides are complete, we sew the crotch next with the same technique as the side seams, making sure each crotch seam allowance meets equally. The front and back crotch won't truly match, so by cutting off the excess, this will probably solve the issue. I then hemmed the shorts with a simple roll-over hem all around. When sewing the top, we sew the front cups to the back bodice using the same simple fold as we did the pants. Then We sew again on the edge to create a rail stitch, creating a firmer stability as similar to the sides of a denim jean. We then add elastic that, when pulled, is the same width as the back bodice, and sew the elastic on the right side up while pulling for tension. You then finish the top and bottom of the bodice using the rollover hem to hide the elastic into the garment. When sewing the ties, we first have to change the amount of seam allowance that will be sewn, which in this case is 3/4 of an inch, to a gradual sew to 1/2 an inch, and sew around the tie. When sewing the tip edge of the tie, it is important to double stitch the end. Keep the needle in, rotate the fabric and repeat in order to double secure the edges. We then cut off the excess fabric on the corners of the ties in order to avoid bulking when pulled inside out. Make sure to gently use a pin to pull out the corners of the ties. We then cut off any unwanted excess bulk fabrics on the other corner before we fold the fabric inwards for a cleaner finish. After folding and pressing the fabric inwards, fit the cup into the ties for a neat finish and bind. For the extra fabric, I decided to make straps and cut only one of the sides open, and cut again to create the straps, and then repeat the process on the other. I then combined the straps to make a longer one, then folded both edges in and put them together and sewed to create a quick strap, and repeated the folding process while sewing. I measured 16.5 inches for the shoulder straps and sewed them by the apex point and equally onto the back bodice. So here's the final look. After trying the bodice on, I decided to move the straps closer to the side seams in order to make more cleavage and to create a more 50s and 60s look. So thank you for watching, and please make sure to subscribe, like, comment, do the good stuff, and watch my other videos if you like. Till then, see you around. Cheers.